Hey everybody, this is Dr. Mark Arcuri coming to you tonight from Santa Fe, New Mexico. And this is our second broadcast for the new year. So we're getting into the flow of the new year here. And indeed, tonight's topic is flow. So we're going to be talking a lot more about that idea. But before I do, I want to remind you that tonight we're going to be picking a winner for the December 2018 free coaching giveaway that folks entered, and we'll be picking a winner, somebody who's going to get a free 4-week coaching package with me. So we'll do that at the end of tonight's broadcast. I've got about 48 pieces of paper in that jar, that mason jar. So I'm going to pick one out at random and see who we can give that coaching package to. So thanks everybody for your entries, and be sure to keep on entering. Every month we're going to have a new contest for something, and the January contest is for a copy. We're going to give away a couple of signed copies of Life Aligned, and everyone who enters can right away download Chapter 2 of Life Aligned, which I just absolutely love. But you'll be entered into the contest that we'll announce at the end of the month for a couple of free copies, signed copies of Life Aligned, hardcover, soft cover, but hard copies, paper copies of the book. So I'm excited to give that away to you as well. And maybe we'll throw something else into the mix at the end when we announce the winners for the January contest, to give you something in addition to the signed copy of the book. So be sure and sign up for those on the website, on Facebook. Pretty much every place you look, you can find a sign-up sheet for that contest. But we will award the December 2018 contest tonight when we finish. So if you were with us last week, and if you weren't, go ahead and listen to the replay on Facebook or on our website. I laid out a plan for looking at 2008 to 2019, I should say, or at least the first several months, as getting into this flow of what I called a recipe for living in 2019 and beyond, not just in 2019. But I want to look at the process as kind of like putting ingredients together for your life, or ingredients that are intended to support how your life, how you'd like it to be at the end of the process as you move forward. And so the ingredients will be various things that I think are really important for us to be considering and incorporating as we put together that recipe and create this cake or bread or whatever you want to call it that will be called your life at the end of the process. And tonight's ingredient is flow. And when I think of flow, I think back to, I hate to say it, but when I was in doctoral training in 2000 or 1999, maybe even, I think that's about right. I had a professor who talked about flow theory, and she talked about a guy, a research psychologist, whose name I'm going to destroy when I try to say it here, and I certainly can't spell it without looking it up. So I'm going to put the name in the comments on the podcast and the Facebook feed and the website, Facebook Live Archives, so that you can see it and Google him if you like. But his name is Mikhail Csikszentmihalyi. And I'm going to say Mikhail just to make it easier, not to be too personal with him. But Mikhail developed flow theory back in probably 30 years ago, if not longer, and it's been used in many ways since then. So it's pretty much in the popular psychology movement now. And flow theory basically is a way of looking at the stressors in our life and our perceived ability to meet the demands of those stressors. And what I mean by that is that something happens in our life, whether we intend it or not, and we're presented with a certain challenge. And then we have to make a quick decision, usually unconsciously at that point. Do we have what we need to meet that challenge? Or do we feel ill-equipped to meet that challenge? So actually, there are three possibilities. One is, first is, do we have the ability to meet that challenge at all? And that's just a given. But if we do have the ability to meet that challenge, there are two possible relationships that we can have with the challenge. One is that we feel overqualified, and one is that we feel underqualified. So if we feel overqualified to meet the challenge, we get kind of bored. We're not really being stimulated very much, even though we're being challenged. And that challenge, if it happens too often, or if challenges like that happen too often, sometimes that happens in a job, for instance, where we're just sort of overqualified for the job. we end up getting depressed. It's just sort of like, what am I doing with my life? What I'm being challenged with is not very stimulating. I can do the job with my eyes closed. I don't need to think about it. I'm bored to death and I'm getting depressed about it. On the flip side, if those challenges happen to us and we feel ill-equipped to handle them, then we sort of get anxious. Things are happening to us and we don't really know how to successfully negotiate whatever that challenge might be. And it puts us in a predicament. So anxiety is usually the result. So when something happens in our life, again, whether we choose to have that happen or not, we make a quick decision first as to whether or not we're equipped at all to deal with this challenge. And then we are faced with a situation where we either feel overqualified and therefore not very stimulated, and over time, if it's a chronic thing, get kind of depressed, or we feel like we can the challenge is coming in and we just can't really handle it. We don't know what to do. And we get kind of anxious over time in that situation. So the ideal, of course, according to flow theory, and I think it makes a lot of sense, is that we're going to find ourselves in a place where the challenges are coming in. We have the ability to meet them. We feel like we're getting stimulated to some degree. We're not, completely bored by it, but we're also not overwhelmed by those challenges. And the chart that Mikhail Csikszentmihalyi put together is basically a graph, and that graph on one axis, on say the left, this is probably your right side, but the left side is the stressor, and across the bottom is your ability to meet those stressors. And then there's a line, let's see if I can do this, that goes, I can't do this, that goes up this way. There we go. And the perfect flow state would be a line that kind of goes straight up and meets the challenge right in the middle. So it perfectly dissects the graph. So you've got the perfect ability to meet the challenges in your life. You're enjoying doing it, and life is good. So we want to find a way to get into that flow this year, where the things that happen in your life are not things that overwhelm you, and they're not things that bore you, but they're things that you feel really good about and have the way to move forward in meeting those challenges. So in thinking of flow as an ingredient in your life, we want to talk about the challenges that you foresee in your life in the next several months. And those challenges are they might be work related, they might be in relationships in your life, they might be things in your neighborhood. Some of you might remember I talked a few months ago about a neighbor that was like parking his car in the front of my house and it was annoying me. Well, you know what? I finally forgot about that. And I came home from a trip and the car was gone. And now he's parking it in his garage, his driveway again. So I never had to think of it again. But sometimes you just have to let things go. And so again, when we think about flow, we want to think about the challenges in our lives. And so what I want to ask you to begin thinking about now is, what challenges do you see coming up in 2009? And those can be of two types. And I'm using the word challenge kind of generically. So sometimes we have intentions of changes that we want to create. And I include those changes as challenges because they do challenge us. So challenges here doesn't necessarily have a negative connotation. So what kinds of challenges might you either be planning to give yourself as 2019 goes along? Or on the other hand, what kinds of challenges could possibly be happening that you're not sure about and you're not necessarily feeling like you're in charge of, but could very well be coming down the pike? Carlos and I have been dealing with some changes in our work over the past several months, and this is not these are not changes that we intended. But on the other hand, we have to deal with them nonetheless. And we have to look and see. And it's very stressful to try to think about whether we feel equipped to deal with these challenges or not. So one of the things that we've had to grapple with is stepping back and reflecting on what's going on. And asking ourselves, did we play some kind of role in what's happening? And if we did, what might that role have been? What might we have done that created this change in our work relationship with certain people that we interface with that perhaps was sprung on us, something that we weren't planning on, but maybe in some ways we made that happen. There's a way that we energetically lined up with that change. And I think what you'll find is in your own life is that any change that you've undergone or that may occur in the coming months, any change that you didn't intend is something that you still had a hand in. And by that, again, I mean that somehow you energetically lined up with it. So in the end, if that's true, and I'll ask you just to kind of go with it for a moment, even if you're not sure, if it's true that we've energetically lined ourselves up with a change or a challenge, even though we didn't intend for it to happen and it did happen, that kind of means that in a way, we've been in charge. And realizing that we're in charge gives us a different relationship to that change and gives us a little bit more empowerment and the ability to feel like, well, maybe I do have more cards in the mix here. Maybe I do have more ability to meet this challenge than I thought I did because, in fact, I did have a hand in creating it to begin with. So what we want to do is play with little tricks like that in our lives in the coming months. When things happen around us that we didn't necessarily intend to happen, and it's a little bit harder to feel good about them for that reason, ask yourself, how did I make this happen? What role might I have played that created this? And that's going to give you a really important clue to the answers that you need to how you might meet this challenge and move forward without getting into too much of a stressful place as you go forward into the new year. So we want to get into this ease and flow. And the ideal place in the ease and flow is to feel like we're not resisting the changes or the challenges at all. So Abraham Hicks, some of you may know, talks about going downstream. When something happens in your life, how do you get in a place where you're going downstream with it? You're not trying to go upstream. You can't paddle upstream. You don't get anywhere. And if you do, the little bit of progress that you might make is exhausting. But when you go downstream, when you go with the flow, you don't have to paddle at all. But it also means you have to give up control. You have to give up trying to micromanage things. So with Carlos and I and the changes that we're dealing with right now and looking at ways that we can meet those challenges and be in as little a place of resistance as possible, one of my personal sub-challenges, I guess, is how do I step away from trying to micromanage what Carlos is doing, because what he does affects me, so that I can be in a much better flow with the changes that are happening, trusting that whatever those changes are, and whatever Carlos does, is going to, in the end, come back and put me in a much greater place in my life than I was before. So, how do you do that? I'm a micromanager. It's not very easy. I don't like to say I'm a micromanager, but I know I am. And I think I'm far less than I used to be, but I know I am. So one of the ways that I grapple with that is to look for new experiences. So let's reframe and say challenges are simply new experiences, but look at them for the opportunities they are. How is this new experience possibly fulfilling an energetic shift that I made maybe a few months ago that I didn't realize I was making at the time, but now in retrospect, I can see that I probably was. or else things wouldn't have played out the way they did. We don't get things that we're not energetically matched with. So how can I first reframe that word challenge and call it an experience, which has a much better feel for me? It's a much more neutral word, experience versus challenge. And how can I then say, how can I take that experience, that new experience that I'm having, as an opportunity, and begin to dissect that? Because if I distract myself with the workings and the goings on of what's happening that's new now, I get out of that anxiety place and I don't feel so ill-equipped to meet that challenge, to meet that new experience, because now I'm actively involved in doing something with it. So now I'm looking at how can I see it as a new opportunity? How can I try out new things in response to the opportunities that I'm starting to see in this new experience? And how do they challenge me? And this is where I think the piece about understanding them energetically aligned with what's going on, even if I didn't choose it. How is this a reflection, or how does it even challenge me to be who I really am? Because that's where the growth comes in. The growth comes in when we are challenged to do something different and to be something different, and to search within us to understand what that being is that we need to be in response to this challenge slash experience slash opportunity. So it requires us to really go in deep and understand, what is the authentic me? I have an opportunity now to approach this new situation. It's a clean slate. I can approach it any way that I want to. So how do I do it from a place of pure authenticity? And if I do that, then it's a building block for future experiences where I have to do the same thing. And if I'm not sure who I am, I can ask other people, how do you see me? Who do you see me as? I can ask the wisdom figures. If you didn't catch the wisdom figures episode, you can find that in the Facebook Live archives page at our website, drmarkarcuri.com. Ask your wisdom figures for a clue as to who you are. And then once you get those clues together, respond to the situation based on who you know your authentic self to be. Then you make a plan. You don't micromanage things. You just make a plan to respond from that authentic part of who you are. And that plan, and this is part of the going with the flow, that plan simply is born of your moment-to-moment inspirations. You do with that experience, you respond to the opportunities that you see in that experience as you're inspired to do in the moment. Whatever you feel inspired to do, you trust it and you go with it. And that's going with the flow that you've created, even if you didn't realize you created it, and even if you weren't so sure that you welcomed it. You don't try to figure things out. You take what you get. You look for the opportunities in it. And then you respond from that authentic self in whatever way you feel inspired. So that's what I want you to play with this week. Take a situation that's going on in your life. It might be easier or even more fruitful to think of something that you didn't necessarily think you were choosing to have happen to you. Nothing too overwhelming. Practice with something smaller. Try to see it as an opportunity, and if it truly is, if you can find the opportunity in it, then that's a clue as to how you energetically may have created it, even though you didn't realize that you were doing that. And once you make that connection, ask yourself, for my authentic self, and even if you have to ask others who that authentic self seems to be to them, who do they really see you as, or your wisdom figures, from that authentic self, respond in a way that you feel inspired to respond. And from that, make your plan as to how to go forward. So let us know your comments in the comments on Facebook, on the website, in YouTube. You can make comments as well, or send us a contact, send us an email from drmarkacuri.com website. But get the conversation going. Put it out to the universe. Get other people's perspectives on what's going on. Don't try to figure things out yourself. You can do that, but it's not usually nearly as rewarding and enriching in terms of your growth and putting together the best cake or bread or whatever it's going to be possible that is going to be your life in 2019 and beyond. All right, so let us know your thoughts. And now let's get to the business at hand. I've got my jar, I've shaken it up. And from these names, I'm going to pick a paper. I'm trying to mix them up some more. I'm all nervous here. And the paper is, it is Susan. Susan. So Susan, if you're hearing this, I've got to say that of the entries that we had, and you know this already because I've tried, the email address that we got from you doesn't work. And I know that we went back and forth a few times and tried to get that sorted out, and then I just left it on the side. We didn't get it sorted out. We still do not have a way to get in touch with you. So I am going to come on Facebook because I know where you left a comment on one of our postings, and I'm going to send you a note there and see if you respond to it, and if you do, figure out a way to get in touch with you. If we can't do that in the next few days, today is Wednesday, so if we can't do that by Monday, I'm going to pick another name, and we'll announce that next week on Facebook Live. So sorry about excuse me. Sorry about that, but I'm super excited, Susan. I'm glad that you won, and I can't wait to see where we can go in 4 weeks of or 4 sessions of coaching together. So congratulations, and for everybody else, thanks again for entering the contest. But go ahead and enter again for this month's contest. We do not carry the names and email addresses over. You can do that on any page at drmarkacuri.com as well as on Facebook. There's a enter here. Sorry, that's my cat playing with the blinds here. I guess she's hungry. But anyway, you can enter on Facebook as well. There's a tab that says something like enter contest now or something like that. But go ahead and enter for a couple of free copies of A Life Aligned and signed copies of A Life Aligned, as well as an automatic right-away download for Chapter 2. And be sure to tune in next week. Next week, we're going to take this idea of flow a little bit further, learning to go along with what seems most important in the moment. So it's kind of a continuation of that conversation of being inspired and learning to trust your inspirations and go with your inspirations, and letting that cake or that bread that you're baking become exactly what it's supposed to become as the weeks go on here in 2019. Thanks again so much. Congratulations again, Susan. We'll do our best to get in touch with you. And if we can't, we'll pick a new winner next week. And we'll see you next Wednesday on Facebook and elsewhere. Thank you so much. Much, much gratitude and lots of love from Santa Fe, New Mexico. Good night.